just to start us off, Gluu is a business process management platform, if you're not already familiar with our company. And we make processes easier to understand, execute, and improve. Today, we'll focus on the execution part, which is increasingly done by robots. I have Søren and Jakob with me today. Søren is our product expert, and Jakob is our technical expert. And they'll be helping us exploring this topic about bots and processes a little bit more in this webinar. Just to give you an idea of our agenda for today, we'll have two main parts. One part will be about the questions that were also posted as part of the invitation for this webinar. So the first one, what happens if bots and processes become disconnected? The second one, how do we ensure that bots work within the scope of our business processes? And finally, how can we place the process owners in the driver's seat? And in the second part of the webinar, we'll be giving you more of a view into Gluu, a demo of how bots can be connected on our platform to your process. But let's get started. So first, Søren, in most companies, bots are something that's handled by the IT department. But can you tell us a bit about your thoughts on how they're connected to business process management as well?
Yes, I guess this is a very fundamental question that really confronts us all today as human beings. Who's in the driver's seat? Is it going to be artificial intelligence or bots or people? And of course, I think we can all agree it should be people. So in that light, we see the bot as an assistant to the process owner, to the process executors, and therefore process management comes first and then the bots as services. So I think it's very important to get this order right, because many companies out there, they start off with bots without having any processes. And that's when it can easily turn into chaos, as we'll talk about today. So processes for us is really the common language for business operations. And this is what most people, most human beings can relate to. And therefore, it's very important. We haven't really established this common language, but we are in the midst of doing it. But if we haven't established a way to communicate about business before we introduce the bots, well, then it will be a very difficult picture to get an understanding of how a business is running. So you can say it's really the division of labor between IT versus the process owners, the process excellence team, and it's our ambition to clearly put the process excellence team in the driver's seat. And most of the IT managers that I speak with, that's definitely also what they like to see. They don't want to be the owners of the business operations and suddenly have to decide on business rules and so on.
Yeah.
So that's how the two are connected.
Yeah. So what happens if bots and processes become disconnected then?
Yeah, I think you see that a lot. You kind of think something is happening automatically, and then suddenly it's not, and something breaks. And sometimes you have a much bigger impact than if some human makes an error, because the volume of runs and transactions can be high. But let's try to take a little bit of an example with how it works when you create a bot typically. Typically, let's imagine you have some department that is handling claims in a company, right? So you have 10 office assistants doing claims typing and manual work with claims. And you're saying, well, that's a great opportunity for creating a bot. So maybe you first start with recording what someone is doing in the different screens, and you program a bot based on this. Maybe you do it in UiPath or some system like that. And then often this is specialist work that is done by an external party. You have a consultancy company, you have somebody external helping the IT department to do this. And then some weeks, or it can be quite fast, maybe shorter, the bot comes back, you test it, and it's put into operations. And then some already here we have a challenge, because who owns the bot now? Is it the IT department? The most companies I see, they know that of course you have to anchor it with the business. So one of these people that were working in the department, that person maybe becomes the owner going forward. And now the person is the owner of the bot, but the person doesn't really know what the bot did. And a lot of the work that the person was doing was maybe almost tacit knowledge, things the person was doing almost automatically. So now that the person is no longer on a day-to-day basis doing this work, they are not spotting that there are needs for changes in business rules. Certain systems change design, forms don't have the right fields anymore. And that human touch is lost. So suddenly the bot suddenly stops working. And even though the person is formally responsible for it, they can no longer be on top of things, because they're not doing this on a daily basis. It could also be that the person leaves the company. So what you have now is a robot that is either operating kind of on its own under no control if the person has left the company, or you have a robot that suddenly stops working without you knowing it. I mean, I can just share within Gluu a lot of our marketing automations. Suddenly we see something not working, but maybe we find out a little bit too late, because we find out by chance when some human is looking at an automation. So what I'm saying is that bots really become a little bit like black holes of knowledge in the organization, unless you are very conscious about it. It's a little bit like all these old sayings, that if you automate a mess, you get an automated mess. And you can say a little bit the same applies with robots, that it is somewhat of you don't have the time or the energy or the political capital to fix the problem, the business process on a fundamental level. So you put in place a robot, which can make a lot of sense. But it really sometimes it's about understanding fundamentally what you're doing, and that's where business process management is the tool. So first you work with business process management. You make yourself aware of the full process, all the people in the process, and you find the place where the robot should work, and then you maybe create the robot when you know there is a case. So I think that is that's the place we have to get to. But now the RPA market is growing much faster than the BPM market, and a lot of companies, they simply don't have the patience to first look at the process. But what we will be advocating here, I guess, is a little bit that you don't have to have the process in every excruciating detail, as long as you have a little bit meat on the bone in terms of governance, when you have a little bit of knowledge of who does what.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good point, Søren. Also, both about the black holes, but also about governance in terms of robots, because that's what we see with a lot of our customers in Gluu. I think I forgot to mention that at the beginning. Actually, sorry about that. I'm head of customer success for Gluu, so I talk to a lot of our customers on a regular basis. And we're very closely linked with the process excellence teams or the process managers in those businesses. But what they're experiencing is that they have this really nice process landscape all mapped out in Gluu. But if the robots are not connected to that process landscape, they have an entire shadow process landscape, more or less. that's running basically from their IT department, and no one really knows what's connected and which robots are working in which process.
Mm. Yeah, that's the challenge. You often have two problems. Either the underlying systems are changing, and the person who's normally put in charge of it would not know that. And since that person cannot monitor it any longer because the person is not personally doing the things any longer, the work anymore, then that is an issue. Of course, IT may pick up on that. The other part is simply when business rules change. And I think this is the part that we will be looking a little bit more at today. What happens when underlying government regulation or internal rules change, or you learn and you need to improve? Those things require flexibility.
Yeah. So how do we do that, Sam, in your opinion? How do we ensure that bots are working within the scope of our business processes, and how do we place the process owner in the driver's seat?
Yeah, that's what we'll try to get to. So let me share an example with Gluu, but I think it's important to stress that this could be any type of business process management system that does some of the same things. You don't have to necessarily use Gluu. The problem is universal. So let's jump into it. If we look at Gluu, then this is an example where you have all your different processes, and you can clearly see who is the owner of each process, so you know generally who's doing what. Then what you could do at this level is you could, of course, make a selection of processes that you tag maybe as RPA candidates, things you could be automating at some point, but that's another point. So this is about providing the context for the bot. So if we dive into that context and look at a process, a sample process. So here we have claims and non-conformities, which is the example we're going to use today. So the lady that I talked about in the example, she may be one of the process participants here. So she may be one of these people that have a role in the process. She may be having a clear business role where you know what she's doing. In this case, she's a customer service representative, and we know her job description. We can see who's doing it. And for each step in the process, we have our normal business rules. And of course, this is all made for human beings. And that's, I think, our point, that first we need to be able to work with things together as human beings with clarity, with transparency. And in this case, we have a complaint handling, and we have some kind of form that is filled in, and we go through the process to understand how we're doing it. Of course, creating all this context, all this work, you will have to do this anyway when you're doing the robot. So you will already have a head start if you at some point want to create the robot. So in this example, we have our robot, for instance, working inside one of the activities, inside one of these work instructions. Of course, we have an option to ask questions, to make suggestions. So the whole path to identifying issues, changes to the robot, changes to what people are doing, we can leave that here in the same context. But if we go to the deepest level here, so here we have a special thing about examining a non-conformity. And here we can have a group of people doing this. And as you can see now, we put in the robot as one of our members of this. So I think that's the point, that they are a little bit like intelligent assistants, or they're doing certain tasks, but they're doing these tasks in line with people and underneath, under the supervision of people. So I think for us, this is about the context that people have to work in. And then based on all these understandings of all the activities we're doing, maybe we can start identifying where we have the volume and where we have the business case for the robot. And then when we find the one, well, we can build the robot and put it in the context like what we have here. So I think that is that's really it. So at this level, any business owner, any business user out there is on board, right? I mean, they can read work instructions, they can click through, they understand what they do versus other people, they see the full flow. And now you have provided the context for someone to understand which small part the robot does. And I should mention, when we talk about robots, it could also have been something that an AI bot will do at some point, or it could be an integration, but you need to know how your systems fit into your process.
Yeah, and I mean, by pulling the robot into the process like this in a very visible way, it becomes very transparent where in our business robots are performing tasks for us, what processes they're involved in. Um, and it might also give, that's our hope at least, it might also give a better understanding of robots in the general organization for regular employees, instead of it being something that's just, in the IT department. Yes, they're working with robots. We don't really know what they do, kind of thing. And by adding them in a very visible way to the processes, it becomes much more transparent as well. But I think we're about ready to move into the more specific details on how to utilize robots and how to actually connect them to our processes. Unless you have any last minute comments, Sam, then we'll move on to.
No,
I'll add Jakob to the conversation again.
Only last one small thing is that it is about really having a language that business users can understand and making sure that this language can communicate with the robots. And that's a little bit what we are taking a few steps at, and what Jakob will be showing, I guess. Then we can stay in the driver's seat as human beings.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for that, Sam. Let's bring Jakob back in the conversation then as well. So Jakob, now Sam has set the scene for us and why it's important to connect bots and processes. But what can you use robots for in Gluu? Can you give us some more practical examples of how that would, or what that would look like in Gluu?
Yeah, sure. A very good area is especially around our cases, which is the execution part of the processes. It's where all the things are happening, and it's where people are doing something. And here, IT, and you can say I represent the IT part today, and come in and say where does my system function fit into your world of the processes and the organization you have built. And the examples could simply be that there has to happen certain things in the systems after a given activity. So I can understand the process by asking Gluu, how is the process? I can do certain things. I can report back to Gluu. I could also help users along the journey. So I could add information from the relevant system and pull out small information about what is the order details, what was it, when was it supposed to be sent, and so on. So I can facilitate the human part of the process that we usually struggle with, where Gluu really has the benefit. So that could be some of the examples.
Yeah. So what you're basically saying, just in case we have any viewers here that are not familiar what case management in Gluu is, it's a way of organizing the execution of your process, linking that to your process, so you can add tasks as well as work instructions to your process, and you can have your employees carry out those tasks and then do the documentation automatically in Gluu. And what you're saying now, Jakob, is that now it's not only people that can be part of a case management flow doing tasks on a process, we can actually add bots as well to that chain of tasks.
Exactly. And so system will be part of the process, but I would also say that the daily work with a process could become a place where you would integrate with a system. Let's say you have an important work instruction and you manage and maintain them in Gluu, but you also need to get them out in certain systems so they show up on the screen in that system as well. And it would be possible to grab the information from Gluu and expose it in the other system as well, so you can continue and maintaining it with a single source of truth in Gluu.
Yeah, so saying you have maybe you have your company policies in Gluu as well, and if there are changes to them, you can have a bot that puts a date stamp, for instance, on your intranet front page, saying, "So be mindful. There's a change here to one of our policies," for instance, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And also you can say that there's also a little bit of basic stuff. Using robots and automation is also about taking all the small IT tasks and avoid having humans to do them. And it could also be basic things like just managing. We have an onboard process. There's a user joining. Then Gluu is the trigger to basically say there's a new user. And they can do something from there as well, or that there's a new formal version of the process, and we need to make sure everybody is informed more specifically in some way.
Yeah, I think we should take a look at our example on the platform in Gluu. Yeah. We want to see how it works. Okay, so let me just put that on the screen for you, Jakob, so you can take us through that example.
And here I have our Hans, so that is logged in the system, and as we mentioned, the bot is promoted as a person, so we can have an understanding of what we are talking about and refer to them with our colleagues. And what I want to present is a little bit about how to run a case. So I will start a case based on that process Søren just showed. Right. So, and in this exercise here, I actually want to make it pretty explicit that I'm going to use a bot on it. So I can use the option that we have the robot or the automation in a colleague-like way. So in this case, I want the examination here not to be done by Kate, but to be done by the robot. And then I'll just start the case. And what I'm going to demo here is a little bit one way of getting some automation done. So first I'll present what it does from a user endpoint in Gluu, and then we'll dive into the technical stuff later because it's a little bit easier to see it this way. So the first one.
Yeah, this part I can understand. the technical part afterwards will be for IT people.
Yeah, so I'll just, when I go through this, I'll just mention what is supposed to be happening along the way. So here the first item is just a simple, I have to evaluate it. And let's say I have done that. And you see here a good example of how we run a case in Gluu. So this is right now people driven. So I'm in as and my next step here is I need to fill out this form. And here's a good example of where we could want some integration, because let's say we have a guy in logistics or something that was used to getting this information in an Excel sheet somebody else has sent them previously. But how would we get that out to him? So here we'll make sure that he get it in the way he likes. So there will be a bot putting it in an Excel sheet. And I've actually opened an Excel sheet here in SharePoint. So I have an Excel sheet here. And here I just have a simple list of items. So you can see, I'll just show it here prior to the robot doing stuff. So you can see the change. And I'll go in and fill out the form here. So I have order number 999 and it's the batch 1010. And let's say I lost some items, and for this demo purposes, I will not do anything further. So I filled out the form because I'm just following the process. And now the robot that I have programmed behind the scene will go in and run some automation. And how would I know that? Yeah, well, back to the information that we can tell these things in the work instructions. And if we jump to the Excel sheet, you can see the robot has updated this item here. So that's an example of our integration. So we take our form and put it somewhere else. It could also be an ERP system or whatever.
So the robot basically just takes the information that was entered in the form by a person, by a human being. In this case, it's about a customer claim, and then sends that information to an Excel sheet, like you showed us, or like you said, we could send it anywhere, basically.
Yeah.
To an ERP system or
back
whatever makes sense.
to how the automation is done. And in this example, we are using Microsoft PowerAutomate for demo purposes. Another thing that is happening is also an illustration of a robot reporting back to the system. So we can see here that the robot I asked the robot when I started the case to start doing this task, and we can see now the examine NCR is actually filled out already. The robot has completed this in the background, maybe done some checks in the system, looked up some information, prepared some files. And if I'm unsure what is this bot doing, I can check the work instruction and I can get an understanding that what it's supposed to do here, and I can see that it's the bot doing it. So that's the example of sending things out and in. And as I mentioned as examples, it could also have been that we have used the bot to just pick out some information, post a little comment to the task, for example, and then the user would have some information to move on.
Yeah. Jakob, can you also show us maybe a little bit more about, we can see here if we click the actual task that the robot did this specific task, but I know that in Gluu we also do a lot of reporting. We have a lot of reporting options.
Yeah.
So if you show us the report for this case specifically for all of the tasks,
so
will we be able to see that the bot did something?
I'll just print the task as the case is right now. So I'll get an immediate report of what the case is right now, and here I can see when the robot did the things. So I'll get that information back. And
can you zoom in, Jakob, a bit?
Yeah. I'll see if I can
your screen is a little bit blurred for some reason. I don't know.
I'm not sure how to.
No.
No, I think it will be okay for now. So what we see in this report is both what the humans did and what was done by the bot. We get all of that information, like we talked about before, Søren, you and I. We get all that very transparent. We see what the bot did in our process.
Yeah, and if I may add, Louise, this is what we want to get to with Gluu. We want to provide the process owner with a full capability to manage an end-to-end process across systems, across departments, across people and bots. Anything that you need in order to know, Jakob, could you just stay on the report? So anything you need to know what is happening, so that this report becomes a complete trail of the instance of the process you have been running. If you have photos, if you have forms, if you have sent data to another underlying system, because with such a report, then the human being can be the monitor of and the controller of the full end-to-end flow, and it's a realistic job to do, because then a robot not doing something is going to be a bit like a system integration not working or a human being forgetting something, but it's all part of the process, and that's what will be needed, we think, because it is going to be a bit of a mess of lots of small systems, lots of integrations, lots of bots, AIs doing certain thing, and we as humans will not be able to stay on top of this unless we take the business process as the starting point and we put the bot in as a servant in that business process.
Yeah, and I mean, you have a good point there, Søren, because if say you have 10 robots or 20 robots, those you might be able to manage manually. But that's not what's happening in this area at the moment. It's not going to stop at 20 robots. We're going to end up having hundreds of robots running in our companies, and then we lose track of what they're doing and when they're doing it and why they're doing it if we do not connect them to our business process. So if you want to work with bots in a scalable way and ensure governance, then you need to somehow link them to your processes using Gluu or another business process management platform of some sort. I think now we have a good idea of what it looks like in Gluu and how the robot can be part of a process. But Jakob, if we're looking into the more technical side of things, what's going on behind the scenes? How do you set this up? Is it complicated or easy to do? And what does Gluu offer in terms of this?
There's of course always a lot of responsibility on the side that needs to do the integration part. But what we are trying to do is to at least help you get very quick started on this. So what the first thing is our API that drive all this, which is the way of getting data and sending data in and out. And we are trying more and more and be better to give that information out so it's much more easily accessible. First of all, it's going to be combined here in the Gluu account management, and you will have some different access to using Gluu. You will have the API access, and the API access is a technical, they call it open API, so it's a industry standard for how to specify these API calls, which make it much easier for everybody to consume them. And I will not go into details to it, but I'll just point out that then you can use these standard tools to see the stuff.
And because it's standard tools, and we set it up using the open API, then you can use them across different types of systems, not just PowerAutomate.
A huge amount of tools to enable you to get started. I'll show one in PowerAutomate in a moment. But to finish this part up, here you'll get access to the token, so you can use tokens that gives access. So I have the robot did it in his name. So you can have multiple robots in Gluu that can do these things, and they do not act as they are like a user, but they are intended for these integrations. We also have full access, so you can read all this stuff out later, so you can use it in Power BI and so on. And the driving factor in this presentation is actually what we call webhooks, which are these triggers that we can tell other system, hey, something is going on in Gluu, you should do something. And to jump on that, what we have done here in the demo is we have used PowerAutomate. PowerAutomate is quite good at doing these pretty basic flows. So I'll set up 2 simple cases here. I have one that does the fill out the form into Excel, and I have one that completes the task when it has done what it needs to do, and say in Gluu that we are done, so people can move on and continue their process. And this standard API makes sure that it's very easy to integrate with us. So we have these custom connectors here. So we'll have Gluu specified here, and you will have them easily available in the system. And if I go in and click on these, I can see when the bot has been running here, and how it went and so on. So if I click on it, it will kind of outline and say, these are my things. And this is what we call a codeless approach. So it's usually some kind of drag and drop approach where you don't have to have a very deep knowledge about how to program these integration. You can basically say, I get a form, I send it over to the Excel sheet. It's a little bit more accessible to many more to do this. And I've set up these 2 cases, and of course it takes some time, but it's usually easier to set up a step like this than it is to figure out, do I have the right system? Should I change it to something else? This is a little bit about, short circuit that journey and just what do we need to improve this right now. We need to avoid doing this manually. And these are specified like Gluu tells us that we do something, and then it asks Gluu for more details about the case. It can ask information about, is it me, the robot, that should do the job? What connections do I have in the diagram? Should I put a note on some of these tasks as well? And take them very much case by case. So we expand the API whenever it makes more sense, because there's hundreds of ways to do it. So we are very flexible in allowing to add more and have more lookups and so on. That's the overall idea on how this technical stuff work, and I don't think it makes sense to dive more into details about.
No, we're of course happy to assist anyone that would like to that's already using Gluu and that would like to use our API to connect with robots or integrate with systems. Just please reach out to us and we'll get you started on that.
Just as a last thing, because it's a good way of illustrating what is possible. PowerAutomate, for example, out of the box comes with a lot of Microsoft tools and so on. So if I needed to send out an email or integrate with Excel or Word or whatever, they have all the other parts, and we are bringing the Gluu part to the table.
Yeah. Jakob, just to finish us off on this webinar, can we just spend a few minutes talking about the future of this area for Gluu in particular? Because RPAs and robots in general and what's happening in this area is moving really, really fast at the moment, especially after the introduction of ChatGPT. What are we thinking from a technical perspective? What are we working on? What do you have your developers doing at the moment?
Yeah, I will. A good example is we really want to connect the processing and the IT much closer, and that require a little bit that they have a mutual language to expose these things. Those outside IT need to know where it's happening.
And processing, do you mean the process team or process excellence team?
I mean the process excellence.
Okay.
But
just jumping in
here that today we, for example, show where our tasks are running, And in some smaller scenarios, it would make sense to visualize where are the bots actually doing stuff. Give me a way to very easily find where the bots are working, where we have things going on, so we can figure out we are making changes, where do they apply. It could also be a lot about decision. Today we demoed a case specifically, so it's task running in our system, but you could also foresee that it's an ERP automation that is running totally in the ERP system, but it's basically just pulling information from our process diagrams. So it's not just about that you draw it out, like when you started doing it visual before you were using Gluu. Yeah, you had it on a paper, but nobody was using it. Could we help you explain these things, point out that the bot is supposed to always work here, and bring some more awareness to it, and use the process diagram much more? That's one of the bigger directions we
Yeah,
want.
yeah, and I know you're working with one of our German customers currently in this area, because that's exactly what they want to do. They want to put a bot in between some of their other systems and Glue, so that the bot can actually read the process diagram and know what to do in the other systems. Did I get that right?
Yeah, but I can also foresee that over time it's also maybe about putting some of the more important decisions. You can sit and write decision until you're supposed to consider yes or no to this. But from a system perspective, what does that yes or no mean? Maybe it makes sense
Yeah.
that you just say that if the customer is a VIP, and then the bot can use that information to apply a logic, and you have more awareness changing it in for those who are working with the pure process part of it, because now you have a mutual language of what is important for
Yeah.
maintaining these bots.
And something that I find really interesting about this next step is that would in effect mean that you as a process owner or the process excellence team would actually be able to affect what the robot is doing by changing the process. So instead of having if you want a bot to do something different now, in most companies you would have to go to IT, tell them, okay, so I want the robot to do this instead of that, and I want to do it at this time in my process now, not at this time. But if you look at it the way that you just described, then the bot is basically just following the process flow, just like a human would be, and that I find very interesting.
I think I think the example that you showed, Jakob, of course, is a robot developed by a human. You developed this one, and that's a little bit the current approach. I also agree that the exciting future approach is where you have artificial intelligence, for instance, a chatbot that asks our API for answers, so that your business process flow, the decision gates, but also the content inside the work instructions becomes the answers to the bot. So, for instance, when you have a customer writing in, what do I need to submit in order to create a claim here? Then it will look at the work instruction. It will say, you need to submit this and this and this. And at some point, you suddenly find out, well, we also need them to submit this. And the only thing that the process owner will do, or one of the editors, is to go in and add a fifth item on the list. And the robot will be asking for the fifth item. I think that's really where we need to get to, where the process owners have a language to communicate not only with fellow co-workers and human beings, but also with the robots, so that maybe we have a IT setting it up originally, but you can fully and safely put it in the hands of the business owner, and the business rules, the decisions will always be transparent in a format like this. That's really the point to go to.
Yeah. I think that's a very nice way to end this webinar with a look into the bright, exciting future of this area. We do recognize that because this is an area that's moving very fast, that Gluu cannot offer, say, the perfect solution that can accommodate every wish any customer might have now and in the future. It is an area that's developing, and we also invite you guys both in this webinar. If you have good input, please send it our way. But also in general, if you're working with robots and you would like to work with us as well, connecting your processes to robots. We're very interested in that and in getting your input.
Yeah, maybe Louise, it's worth mentioning that we will of course have a lot of more out-of-the-box connectors coming up. So the initial,
Sure.
like Jakob was showing, connecting to whatever your tool of choice, whether it's UiPath or whatever Zapier make, then you can do that.
Yeah, definitely. Anything else to add? We don't have any questions today, so unless there's something you guys want to add, I think we'll just leave it at that and say thank you to everyone that